The Tag Heuer Aquaracer versus the Longines Hydroconquest. It is finally here. You guys have been asking for this one for such a long time, and it's finally time to see who wins. Sitting right beside me is the Tag Heuer Aquaracer 300 meter professional, and then we also have the Longines Hydroconquest, as well as the Omega Moonwatch, but that is for something totally different. So let's put them head to head, starting with the specs, and see which one you should go for. Welcome back to Time on the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison, as always, and let's start with the specs. So both of these watches come in at 43 millimeters in diameter. Now, I know you can get a 41 variant and a 39 in the Longines Hydroconquest, and I believe you can go slightly smaller in the Tag as well, but these are the models that we had available. This measurement is that slight bit too big for me on both of these models, but it's not a negative about the watches, it's just that I have slightly skinnier wrists. So for that one, I'd call it even. Now let's move on to the thickness. So for those of you that know me, you'll know that I prefer slightly slimmer watches, and this is because of my lifestyle. Something that sits that little bit closer to the wrist is less likely to get damaged and less likely to get bumped. So I do prefer slightly slimmer watches. Now the Longines Hydroconquest comes in at 11.9 millimeters in thickness, whereas the Tag Heuer Aquaracer that we have in our left hand at the moment comes in, according to our digital calipers, at 12.4 millimeters in diameter. So on this front, I would actually go with the Longines. I do prefer slightly slimmer watches. Moving quickly on to the case and the bracelet of both of these models. Both of them come in stainless steel, which is a relief to me because stainless steel is probably my favorite metal other than platinum, but I am poor and I cannot afford platinum, so I'd have to go for stainless steel. The case shapes are actually quite interesting on both of these models. I would say that the Tag Heuer looks a little bit more compact and a little bit smaller than the Longines Hydroconquest. And I think it's because the Longines Hydroconquest kind of has more accentuated features. It has longer lugs. It's a little bit more elegant looking, a little bit longer, whereas the Tag Heuer is a little bit more rugged and a little bit more sporty. The bracelet on both of these models is also an interesting one. So on the Longines Hydroconquest, you have the middle link of polished steel, and then the two outside of the middle link as brushed steel, whereas all three links on the Tag are brushed. Now, technically speaking, I do like polished steel because of how it looks on the wrist, because of how it feels and reflects the light. But on the same note, if you want something for ruggedness, something for toughness that won't show scratches, I wouldn't go for polished, I would go for brushed. So it's a difficult one. I suppose, do you want a more dressy watch or do you want a more sporty watch? Because if it's a sporty watch you're after, I'd go for Tag. Problem being is I already have 3 sports watches at home. I have 2 Tudor Blancpains, I have my Omega Seamaster, and I probably have another one sitting around. So at the moment, I'd probably sway towards the more dressy Longines. The Longines Hydroconquest has a safety latch just here and then a deployment clasp just underneath it. But what I've noticed, and this is very, very simple, everyone does it, everyone cuts their nails. In my point of view, actually, I bite them. It's not a good habit, don't do it, but I do bite my nails. And when you have shorter nails, the deployment clasp with the safety latch can get a little bit tough to open. It can dig under your nails. Functionality-wise, this is actually better than the Tag in terms of having a safety latch, but it's just that little bit hard to open for me. So I do prefer Tags here. The Tag has a deployment clasp just here, and it also has easy macro adjustments on the clasp, which is a huge feature for me personally. Having slightly slimmer wrists, I do prefer things that are fitted that little bit closer to my wrist. I don't like having a sort of little sag on my watch. I like it really tight on my wrist. So that is a really nice feature to me. So that is why I would go for the Tag. Technically speaking, the functionality on the Longines bracelet, having that safety latch for a diving watch is what you want. But I just prefer the style of the Tag. Moving on to the dials of both of these models, and obviously the bezels of both of these models, because the bezels are an interesting one, but not before we plug Chisholm Hunter. If you want to shop Longines or Tag Heuer models, make sure you head to chisholmhunter.co.uk and we'll link it in the bio for you. I think the dials and the bezels on both of these models are what make them so different. One of them looks a little bit more elegant, a little bit more classy, and the other one looks a little bit younger, a little bit sportier, and a little bit I would say more bold, and the tag is the more bold model. So let's begin with the tag. It has a hexagonal shape on the bezel. I hope that's right. If I'm wrong and it's octagonal, then please correct me in the comments, but it's one of the two. And I like these corners. I like these steep, sharp corners. It kind of has that 70s feel to it. But the teeth on the tag are a little bit less prominent than the Longines. And to an extent, you could say that the Longines bezel is easier to turn. The bezels on both of these models are dark blue. They're a dark, deep blue, but the tag has a darker, deeper blue than the Longines. And personal preference to me, I would go for the tag here. But the white numerals on the Longines bezel are a lot more prominent than the tag's bezel. So the Longines is actually easier to read. So it depends what you want to go for here. I mean, if it's style, I would go for the tag. If it's functionality, I would go for the Longines. And then also the Longines teeth, as mentioned previously, are a lot more prominent, a lot easier to turn. Now, I've said this in previous reviews, but if you think about a diver that's going to 300 meters with a big, thick wetsuit on, they need those prominent teeth in order to turn it. Also those clicks. That sounds nice. Before we move on to the dial of both of these models, let's talk about the crowns for a second. Both of these crowns are quite prominent. They're a lot bigger than what I'm used to, but the Longines especially is a lot bigger than what I'm used to because of those crown guards. Now, I understand why they've done it. It's kind of like the Longines logo on the crown. It's a cool feature, and both of them feature screw down crowns, which give them a water resistance of 300 meters. There's not really a comparison there, but if I had to say, I would go with the tag's crown. I just think the Longines crown, for me, is a little bit too prominent. But at the same time, I do like the fact that they've added this design feature which looks like the Longines logo. So it's a difficult one, but I'd sway towards tag. Moving quickly onto the weight of both of these models. The tag Heuer model comes in at, this is the full bracelet, so it's not the rubber strap or anything, it's the full bracelet, no links taken out, 189 grams, whereas the Longines Hydroconquest comes in at 194 grams. Both of these watches are pretty much the same weight, but I think the slight increase from the Longines side is because it has a bigger bracelet to start with, but obviously, unless you have very big wrists, then you won't need all those links, so you can take them out. I mean, I have 6.5 inch wrists, so I would probably have to take about 4 or 5 links out here because it's just a little bit too big for me, but I think that is where the weight comes from. And now, at long last, I've stopped rambling and we can actually get onto the dial. But I'm going to ramble a little bit longer and say that I'm actually wearing the Omega Seamaster 300 meters, and it's that time again. It's the time for the tradition around here at Chisholm Hunter. It is the wrist check. What is on your wrist today? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing all the weird and wacky watches that are on your wrist, so please let me know what you're wearing. Let me know the story behind them. Let's have a conversation. Beginning with the color on each of these models, they both come in a deep blue color, but there is quite a big difference on the dials. The Longines Hydroconquest has a sunburst pattern running through it, which looks beautiful in the light, but the Tag Heuer Aquaracer, for me, wins it because it has a teak lined pattern running through it that gives it that extra depth that you're after. And coming from an Omega Seamaster that has that wave motif, I do like that pattern running through it and that depth running through it. But I think this is a more modern thing. If you look at watches back in the day, they do not feature textures on the dial like this. So depending on if you're wanting a classy model or maybe a little bit younger sporty model, depends which one you'd go for. The date window on the Tag Heuer is at 6 o'clock, which is fantastic, but they've put a magnification window over it, and I'm just not as big a fan on magnification windows. I would prefer not to have the magnification window. So I like the fact it's at 6, but I'm not too keen on that magnification window. Whereas on the Longines, they haven't got the magnification window, which is great, but they've put the date window at 3 o'clock. So it's kind of a catch-22 here. I like both of them in terms of aesthetics and looks, but I would like to see the date window at 6 o'clock without the magnification window, so neither win. The hands and the indices on both of these models are highly polished and filled with Super Luminova, which shines really bright in the dark actually, and we'll show you that in a little second. The reflections that come off of the hands and the indices are really, really bright on both of these models. I have to say, there's no winner there, they're both great. But where there is a winner is on the tip of the second hand on the tag, they have a splash of yellow. Whereas on the Longines, it remains just that silver color. And I like that splash of color. I do, it's young, it's trendy, it's new, and I like it. But then I know that classically, they wouldn't have that. They wouldn't have that splash of color. And when you think of vintage watches, you rarely get a splash of color like that. So in terms of aging, I think the Longines would actually age better than the Tag. But at the moment, being a younger man, I'd probably go for the Tag. The lume shines extremely bright. It is quite a bright room at the moment, but you can see the blue hands here. It has green lume around here, and also this is lume as well on the bezel, making it a fully functional dive watch. As you can see here, the lume on this is pure blue. It's quite bright in this room, remember, and it has a dot on the bezel just here. And now that we have covered the specs, the dials, the bezels, the detail of both of these models, let's move on to the movement of both of them, then compare the movements, and then get down to our final decision. And also cover the price, because normally when you're buying a watch, that's the first thing you look at. The Tag Heuer Aquaracer has the Caliber 5 fully automatic movement. This movement is not in-house. It has a power reserve of 38 hours and a balanced frequency of 28,800 VPH. The movement in the Longines is the Caliber L888 movement. It's a fully automatic movement beating at a frequency of 25,200 VPH. This has a power reserve of approximately 72 hours and is in-house. The Longines Hydroconquest in my right hand comes in at £1,390, whereas the Tag Heuer Aquaracer comes in at £2,700. So there's a big gap there, and technically speaking, the Longines movement is better than the Tag Heuer movement. And I also love the fact that the Longines movement is in-house. Now, both of these watches are very, very different. I would say that one is appealing to a slightly younger market than the other one. But here's the thing, I am a young gentleman. I am 24 years old and I'm attracted to that more sporty, colorful, bold look. So I think it depends on your personal preference here. If you want something that's going to age maybe a little bit better, if you want something that's a little more sophisticated, a little more classy, then I would go with the Longines. But if you want something younger, something a little bit bolder, I would go with the Tag. If you've enjoyed this episode of Time on the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter, then make sure you hit this subscribe button right here, or follow us on Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches. We post behind the scenes all the time of what we're doing with this Longines watch. I'll see you next time.